Hello and welcome to Subbacultcha, and we've got another great show tonight with readings from Kevin Higgins, Shannon O'Reilly, Rosamund Taylor, and Wayne Power, and live music from Edine Costley and Oran Byrne. And I'm going to get straight into the music first. And Oran Byrne is a singer-songwriter based in Waterford, Ireland. Byrne quickly exploded onto the Waterford music scene in 2021 with his second release and hit single Paranoia, which has garnered over 1,000 streams on Spotify. His biggest influences, both musically and lyrically, are the Beatles and Arctic Monkeys. This is particularly evident in his songwriting, as he tends to embrace the rich harmonies that define the Beatles in his own music, coupled with the softly sung poetic lyrics that John Lennon and Alex Turner are noted for. Sorry. And we're going to go over to Oran now. Hi, Oran.
Hey, Derek. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
And there, I believe there is big news today. I saw on Facebook of
an
album.
Yeah, indeed.
Let's about that before you kick us off with a song.
Yeah. I announced just kind of after midnight, I think it was, I'm releasing my debut album on the 6th of May. So it's called Moving Forward. It's got 8 songs and it's going to be released 6th of May, like I said, and it'll be available on all streaming platforms, and you'll be able to buy physical copies in golden discs right here in Waterford as well.
Brilliant. Is it all recorded and everything ready to go?
Yeah, it's all done and dusted.
Brilliant. Well done. Okay, well, I guess we'll get, I imagine we'll get a sneak preview now.
Of course, yeah, that's the plan. So I'm going to I'll just grab the guitar, and I'm gonna have to stand up for this, you know.
Okay, no problem.
Let's move the chair out of the way there. Now,
let's rock and roll.
Yeah. So now I'm going to be performing one of the. So this is an exclusive preview of one of the new tracks off the album. First time playing it live. It's a song called Your Lies. So I'll kick it off. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. Poke me, laugh at me until I cower down, and I end up on the ground. The tide is coming in tonight, but I am not surprised. It's just every day I'm struggling to keep my head above the light, 'cause every day I'm greeted by the darkness in your eyes, the eyes that told me I would always be part of your life. How could I have been so blinded by your lies? That would not make any sense. You mock me and point at me until I start to frown, and I'm nowhere to be found. The tide is coming in tonight, but I am not surprised. It's just normal. Every day I'm struggling to keep my head above the light, 'cause every day I'm greeted by the darkness in your eyes, the eyes that told me me I would always be part of your life. How could I have been so blinded by your lies? Daddy's coming in tonight, but I am not surprised. It's just the norm. Every day I'm struggling to keep my head above the light, 'cause every day I'm greeted by the darkness in your eyes. The eyes that told me I would always be part of your life. How could I have been so blinded by your lies? Thank you.
Well done. Brilliant stuff, Oran. Thanks so much. And an exclusive to Subculture, Your Lies by Oran Byrne, with an album to come very soon. Okay, and we'll have more from Oran a little bit later. Now we're going to get straight into some spoken word, some poetry reading. Rosamund Taylor is a winner of the London Magazine Poetry Prize 2020 and the Martin Crawford Award for Poetry 2017. This year, her poems have appeared in Butcher's Dog, Dyslexia and Magma, and in Washing Windows 2 by Ireland House. A selection of her poems is included in Queering the Green, post-2000s Queer Irish Poetry, Lifeboat Press. And her debut collection, In Her Jaws, very exciting, is published by Banshee Press. And hello, Rosamund.
Hi, Derek, and hello, everyone. Thanks so much for...
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say we had David Toms on the first Subculture a couple of months back, and David is also published by Banshee Press this year, I think. So I think we have both releases by Banshee Press now ticked off the list. So tell us about In Your Jaws. Tell us about the book then.
Yeah, it's coming out in May, so I'm very excited about that. And yeah, I'm going to share some poems with you that are from that collection. I think mostly poems that I haven't really had the opportunity to share with an audience before today, because I haven't had the opportunity to do as many readings as I would like.
Yeah, of course. Okay, I'm going to let you take it away.
Great, thank you. And thanks so much for organizing this. It's really nice to be here. So I'm going to start with the first poem in my collection, which is something people have had questions about what animal I'm writing about. So if you want to tell me afterwards what you think it might be, you can do that. So this is called I Met My Other Self. I met my other self in Knocksink Wood. She wore grey. Sweet chestnuts and hornbeams were losing their last leaves as morning light stretched shadows. She busied herself in the mulch, searching for something, a bulb, a nut. I made her shiver as though she'd unearthed a blue tit, its mouth glued shut by frost. I was a week of rain, raw bark, mud in her mouth, nights too wet to sleep through. I stepped towards her. She sprang up the closest oak. She was more air than body, her fur full of light. So as you can probably tell from that poem, I love being in nature and reading about the natural world. But since I was a child, I've kind of had a sense that being by myself in a wild space isn't always safe, and it's usually not because of other animals or creatures in the wild, but because of other humans. And this is a sort of poem about that. It's called Old Quarry. A child in my polyester uniform, I came here, seeking a little vixen, imagining I'd tame her. Webs warped over the loom of brambles, hid beer cans and plastic bags. The all-night garage hummed. Petrol smell settled in the leaf mold. But I listened to the conversations trees hold, the rippling of whispers from branch to root, layering through leaves, pretending I was a mushroom growing in beach mast, in rhythm with the grey and tan striped spiders. I was sure one day the fox, her tidy face, would peek from skeletons of purple loosestrife, and we'd play in fuchsia together. Instead, underneath the wild crab apples, a man displayed his phallus to me. So on from that to astronomy. This is a poem about Caroline Herschel, who was the first woman to discover a comet, and her astronomical charts were really invaluable to future astronomers. In 1828, she was awarded a gold medal by the Royal Astronomical Society, and no woman would receive one again for 168 years. So this is called We Become Witches. Astronomy is no better than witchcraft, Mother said. Books frightened her. Perhaps she's right. Only witches would come in January to this frozen field, when the moon is a sliver and eyes burn. I am a molehill of wool, featureless, chanting star charts to myself like a charm, investigating mathematics instead of fine sewing, or the downy shape of a baby's head. A black door swings on its hinges. With my telescope, I walk on Pegasus's wings. I don't see witches, no hags boiling curses, no virgins crying in pools of silver blood, not even here in the stars. But it feels like sorcery when I unstitch the sky, unpicking nebulae, finding a white tail and another. I see myself here and here. I am a comet, my orbit long, inscrutable, easy to overlook. So this next poem is, I wrote when I picked up a really old copy of Jane Austen's novel Emma, and I found that my great-grandfather's initials were on the first page. And it kind of made me think about these little traces of our ancestors that are preserved and how much are lost. And it was also, I was thinking about my wife Milena and her family history, and it was kind of the connection between pieces of both of those. So this is called On Deciding to Read Emma. On the title page of Emma, I find my great-grandfather's initials and the year, 1944. It's warped, salt-stained. I picture him reading in faltering light, on the mailboat from Dunleary to Holyhead, as the sea swells, clenching a cigarette in his uneasy mouth. So little of the past survives. Scraps are blown into my life like clothes from someone else's washing line. There's a stack of shell-shaped bowls in the kitchen, perhaps a century old, and I see my nose, broad and blunt, repeated on hazy figures in undated photos. All Milena has from her grandmother is a pair of earrings, gold tinged red by copper, and shadows of things unvoiced. One evening in December, tree-lit, we find her great-grandfather, his picture preserved online. Left profile, right profile, and facing front. His head shaved, scalp gnarled, eye sunk, and a record of his death in 1941, after 3 months in Auschwitz. His profession, farmer. Later, Milena rests her head in my lap as I read Emma. The cover falls off in my hands. And this next poem is sort of about history as well. It's called Dorsen, which is a German nickname for Dora, and it's about Dora Richter, who was born in 1891 and died in 1933. She was the first person to ever receive male-to-female gender affirmation surgery, and I think she's really often kind of forgotten about in queer history because she was working class and a domestic servant, and we kind of tend to focus on people who are artists or doctors or do things that are more kind of conventionally exciting. But I really wanted to think about her. Dorsen. If I could, I'd give you a day off. Woman's work is not kind to the hands. Hot water swells and reddens fingers. Potato peelers nick the knuckles. And in the evenings, you sew when you sit, darning socks, mending doctors' coats. You sing with the other women, rounds of folk songs you learnt as children. I'd like to invite you here to a deck chair on a sunny evening, after a wet day while ferns unscroll and the wind smells of three-cornered leek and wild mint. Sit down, I'd say. You're my guest. Would you like sect or prosecco? If you let me, I'd roll the stockings off your tired feet and rub your soles, swollen from standing for too long. As the birds began their evening song, you'd relax. I kneel there, looking up at you. Tell me about yourself. Tell me everything. Okay, I just have 2 poems left, which I've heard is one of the best things you can hear at a poetry reading. So I've written a lot of poems about my wife and kind of the transformative nature of love, and often the way I find to express my love is exploring different aspects of who she could be. So this is called When My Wife is a Werewolf. When my wife is a werewolf, she licks my scars. Her tongue deciphers the raised lines. She doesn't ask. She knows fear festered in my guts until I had to cut it out. She understands. She grows fur in moonlight, teeth her gums can't contain. All night she howls, longing to silence a deer's pulse with a jerk of her jaw, or to tear a man's throat. She belongs with jagged shadows, sharing a kill. When she holds me, I feel the length of her claws against my back. She could rend ribs. I bury my nose in her fur, smell a peat river, bitter tea. I am small as a rabbit against her, yet I feel huge as the forest she longs for. So this final poem is a really new poem, and it's based on some stories you may have read in your childhood. They were published around 1930, and I think they're maybe set around 1910. And they're the Millie Molly Mandy stories by Joyce Lancaster Brisley. And they all involve Millie Molly Mandy doing things like going to the school fete or rescuing a duckling, and they're all very charming. But I started wondering about what life would be like for Millie when she grew up, and that's where this poem came from. It's called Millie Molly Mandy Smokes on the Downs, with apologies to Joyce Lancaster Brisley. Want to go for a drive? My 3rd day back, Susan hung over the gate, tall now and plump as suet pudding. I watched her hands on the gears, quick and sure. She'd driven ambulances. She winked, held out a cigarette as the field stretched ahead, wet enough to swim in. I lit it for her. Then I was on the ward. A soldier who'd lost both his arms rolled his torso away from me. He refused the gruel I spooned, even the cigarette I held to his lips. Smoke and fog. No colours left now. No brooks, blackberries, and no boys to take me fishing. Far out on the downlands we stopped. The glass fogged. I said, Billy and I used to look for fossils here. She smiled. I know. I was jealous. Her hair shone bright as a duckling as she passed me another cigarette. This time I drew on it. Her fingers lingered on my wrist. I imagined we were on our way home from the pictures, that I was her girl. The press of mouth and breath hung between us like a dream. How dreams used to be, full of chance and possibility. So thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rosamund. What an amazing array of characters there. Each character in some of those poems, including in the poem about Emma. That's a novel in itself with the characters in that one. Well done. That was brilliant. Thank you. And I like to ask everyone, Is there something at the moment that you're obsessed with, loving, anything at all?
Yeah, I have kind of a habit where I find a slightly obscure writer and then discover I need to read everything by them. So lately I've been reading everything I can find by this guy called Denton Welch. He was an artist and he later became a writer in his early 20s after a bicycle accident damaged his spine. And he died in 1948 when he was only 33. But he produced these 3 amazing, beautiful novels that are just so individual, and they capture this really kind of precise aesthetic sense. And they're full of this kind of poignancy and lust for being alive. So I really love them. I really recommend them if you can find them.
Brilliant. Denton Welsh?
Denton Welch, yeah.
Brilliant. And as I said, I usually say, I always end up hearing recommendations of people that I haven't heard of, and that's one. That's another new one for me. So thanks so much. Thank you, Rosamund.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to move straight on to some more poetry. Wayne Power is a writer, poet, and spoken word artist from Waterford. He has released 2 volumes of poetry, 2020's Everyone's a Star After Midnight, and just recently, Neon Hearts and the Angry Mob. Hello, Wayne.
How are you? Thanks.
Now, before I turn it over to you, I got to tell you a quick story that concerns yourself and myself, which I don't think you know yet. So myself and Wayne, I organize a fundraiser for Ukraine on Friday, and in Waterford, and Wayne is from Waterford as well, obviously, and Wayne kindly performed at it. He also gave a spot prize, which was a personalized poem for anyone who won it. Wayne was going to write a personalized poem for them. So Saturday night, I went to a Italian restaurant in Waterford, and an Italian waiter came over to serve me. And as soon as he saw me, he said, "Were you," in a very thick Italian accent, "were you at the fundraiser?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I won the poem." So I asked him, had he an idea what he wants you to write? And he said, "I have no idea." So you may have to learn a little bit of Italian, Wayne. You might have to get a few Italian phrases in there.
I was speaking to him afterwards, and he said the only idea he had was about the missus. So I was like, that's fair enough.
Lovely. A love poem.
I'll write a love poem about your work.
Okay. So Wayne, tell us about the new book, which is just released.
So it came out last month. We launched it about a month ago yesterday, actually, or Monday, I should say. And it's called Neon Hearts and the Angry Mob. So it's basically, it's split in 2. So you've got part 1 is Neon Hearts, which is kind of a bit more lighter stuff, I suppose. And then the Angry Mob kind of delves into kind of a lot of social issues. It was written probably, I think most of it was written during lockdown too, which wasn't kind of an easy time. So it kind of, yeah, there's a bit more fire and fury in this one, and on this particular section. Yeah, there's still a bit of humor and a bit of hope, I think, in some of them.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you then, Wayne.
Thank you. So I'm going to do a poem called The Dandelion Clown, which is a poem, a tribute to Tom McGinty, otherwise known as the Dice Man, who was a sort of a performing arts guy on Grafton Street back in the 80s and early 90s. And I remember reading an article about him last summer and was just kind of mesmerized by what I read. I kind of had a little idea of who he was, not too much of an idea. So yeah, I wrote this called The Dandelion Clown, which was one of his nicknames. So this is the Dandelion Clown. Mother Ireland, come set your children free. The Dandelion Clown, the Dice Man, the High King, the legend of Tom McGinty. The Zen walk down Grafton Street where you once donned fishnet stockings and a G-string, in stunned, shocked, modest Ireland. Bloody visuals for Declan Flynn, beaten to an early grave in Fairview Park. The race to purge the dreamers and the steamers. Rebel queers and mascara tears, a wink from the Dice Man on a Saturday afternoon thoroughfare. A living visual, who stripped on the seats of the central bank. What's another queer painted on placards as you stood outside the dial, and when HIV, the unspoken taboo, the one you broke with a sledgehammer in front of those clambered around their TVs in Catholic Ireland. The trail was blazed, the legacy etched in stone. For who are you to atone for the sins and stigmas we used to leave in the dark shadows? They carried you the length of Grafton Street as you departed for some kind of heaven from a cemetery in Glasnevin. Mother Ireland, come set your children free. The Dandelion Clown, the Dice Man, the High King, the legend of Tom McGinty. So that's for that's what we're going for Tom McGinty. Next poem we're going to do, we're going to stick with Dublin, because a lot of my work is rooted obviously in Waterford. But this next poem is probably the oldest poem I've ever performed. I think this is actually the first time I've ever performed this poem. It's about 17 years old. I think this winter will be about 17 years old. And it's just basically about, I suppose, gallivanting around the north side of Dublin, as in Stony Batter, around that area, which I believe is now kind of a gentrified part of Dublin. It's that long since it was in Dublin. But I used to kind of hang around that part of Dublin back in the day. And this is called Inner City Waltz. Margie Houston stands alone at the bus stop on Manor Street, ranting about the prostitutes on Arbour Hill. Have no pity for the inner city. We waltz down Prussia Street to the chimes of the Ockram church bell. City lights ahead. Mr. Cork smokes alone outside the Glimmerman. Turn the corner past Stony Batter. Nationalities and the old guard make their way homewards. Smithfield Plaza never looked so beautiful the night you fended off the wolf whistles and admiring glances from the men outside the laneys. City lights ahead. The spire like a watchtower in the dark, almost killed by an orchestra of taxis and buses. Curse the night, lament the city. Capel Street was dark and sinister. Dirty, smoky bars full of saints and sinners. We posted our love letters to the city. O'Connell Street, a murky, vibrant ballroom. The city lights were ours. We laughed our heads off in the back seats of the Savoy and threw popcorn at the screen. O'Connell's statue threw me a frown, I swear, as we cursed obscenities at taxi drivers at 3 a.m. We threw our chips in the Liffey and walked home. The city lights ahead, villainous streaks in the night. We just wanted to go home. Good night kisses, laughter in the air. The quay spun in eerie silence. Prostitutes still lingered by the railings outside Arbour Hill Prison, smoking their pains away. City lights behind. Inner city waltz across the ballroom of the city night. And that's Inner City Waltz. And I think I'll do, if I've time there, I'll do 2 more because I know mine are quite long. And we're going to go back to Waterford for this one. And anyone that knows me would know there's a certain part of Waterford that I'm quite fond of, known as Spring Garden Alley. And if you listen very carefully, there is a local chanteuse name dropped in this particular poem. So this is called Spring Garden Alley. The cat's out of the bag down Spring Garden Alley. Cats prowling and scowling like the ones Rosemary Dodson sings about. I can see the top of the Friary light up the skyline over Spring Garden Alley, watching me saunter after midnight. I've just walked out of Jordan's and I'm about to take flight up Spring Garden Alley. There's a homeless man living in a tent in the cul-de-sac off Spring Garden Alley, and I wonder, does he rally when the rain lashes down in the middle of town and the cats scurry under the cars for shelter? In the summer, I can feel the temperature swelter. I can hear the dogs barking as we approach the apple market. I see my drunken troop reflected in the roof, but sure, I'm only reclaiming my youth. In the hub, some cover band is playing Valerie. I can see all the usual heads outside the road gallery. A girl with her skirt too high, some fella in tracksuit ends with his eyes to the sky, Casbar kids in skinny jeans, sure they're barely out of their teens. Some fella stopped by a guard giving him grief, gets pulled into a cop car outside Little Mischief. The market bar is bopping, steamed up, bopping and slut dropping. Drunken giggles down Spring Garden Alley as the night called you home because you've drank too much and said too much, laughing in the shadows of Spring Garden Alley, where the cat's out of the bag and he's hissing and purring, and we'll saunter and stagger without an ounce of class or swagger, looking back at the night, pissing against the railing. Sure, it's not all plain sailing, but I'm not even stirring the galley. I'm just skitting and laughing down Spring Garden Alley. And that's my beloved Spring Garden Alley, and a little name check for or local chanteuse, the one and only Rosemary Dorsen. So Derek, I'll do one last one, which is out of which is from part 2 of the book, which is called The Angry Mob. So this is, I suppose, the title. I just want to say the title track. So The Angry Mob is basically just a commentary about social media, and it stemmed from an earlier poem I used to perform called Have a Day Off. And it's basically just about how mainly social media these days is just miserable, and it's an echo hole of misery. And yeah, there's a few comments on cancel culture as well. So this is called The Angry Mob. The pitchfork mafia, the keyboard kings, the righteous indignation, the fickle way the pendulum swings. There's a thread of offended people on Twitter who are offended by those who defended what was offended, and those who are offended, and those who defended, and everyone is offended because what was intended was defended, and everyone is offended. And if you're not offended, you'll probably end up offended, even if it wasn't intended. The pitchfork mafia, snowflakes and libtards, virtue signaling blowhards. The angry mob intends to fix and amend, make a trend. Angry anonymous trolls, vitriol-laced opinions, rounding up the minions. Here comes the angry mob to lob abuse, be obtuse but never diffuse, inflame the debate and discourse. But what's worse, should they target your past, the research is vast, for they will call you out, be indiscreet, all because you once posted a tweet over a decade ago. Trialed by social media like the old Roman Colosseum, you are hereby at the behest of the pitchfork mafia and its associates, the angry mob. We hereby cancel you indefinitely. Head on a stick within a click. Another social media prick, bandwagon arslick. Give your 2 fingers a flick. Let the mud stick. That escalated quickly. Are you taking the mick? Trolls getting on my wick. MAGA Trump loving Hicks. Some milkpiece getting tick. Downward spiral once it goes viral. The pitchfork mafia, the keyboard kings. Here comes the angry mob. We will set the agenda from our smartphones, strip you to the bones till you atone for your past or present deeds. Civil society doesn't do civil discourse. You can't say that. You can't think that. Retweets and blocks with opinions to lob. Here comes the pitchfork mafia, the angry mob. We are hereby offended. Trends of hot air, too much time to spare. Retweet and share, diatribes and bad vibes, screenshots and hot takes, career wakes, profiles fake, only fans and revenge porn. The online scorn, spewed by the angry mob, ain't you got a gob. We'll rule the world from our iPhones. Hashtags and media slags, gifs and memes, pulling the patriarchy apart at the seams. Social media is the poor man's rock and roll. Echo chambers and empty ramblings with no soul. The pitchfork mafia, the keyboard kings, the fickle way the pendulum swings. All rise for the angry mob. Thank you.
Hello, Wayne. Can I say, if the Apple Market and Spring Garden Alley and that entire area is ever wiped off the map, we can recreate it with your poems?
Well, if it does ever happen, Derek, you can be rest assured I'll be strapped to a pole somewhere down that end, around me. Which
okay, before we let you go, what are you obsessed with or loving at the moment?
Music wise, at the moment, I'm listening to a lot of Phoebe Bridgers, who's a Kiwi singer-songwriter. She kind of went over my head when she kind of first came out, because she was like a critic starting. And then I saw she did a song with the Killers and Taylor Swift, who myself and Shannon O'Reilly are obsessed with. And, and a few songs came up on shuffle, and I was like, right, I gotta check out her. And yeah, at the moment, I'm just kind of constantly listening to her, which is not really a great thing, because the music can be quite melancholic. At the moment, yeah, Phoebe Bridgers, and also have to say Stephen James Smith's See No Evil album that came out on Friday is just incredible, because he would be a big hero of mine. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm kind of listening to at the moment.
Brilliant. Nice plug for Stephen there. Thanks, Wayne.
Cheers, Derek.
Okay, let's have some music. Aideen Costley is a multi-genre singer-songwriter with a broad range of music influences. She likes to create dreamlike and emotion-influenced music using keyboards and her own personal experience. Her latest EP is Graveyard and Chill, an indie and soul-influenced collection of 4 songs with a pastel pop aesthetic. Hello, Aideen.
Hiya, how's it going?
I have to say, I absolutely love that name, Graveyard and Chill.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I kind of worked on it when I was like a teenager, and a lot of them are quite older songs. But yeah, no, I don't have my keyboard with me today, so it will be kind of an acoustic.
Okay,
kind
even
of
better. Even better. Another exclusive for Subbacultcha here.
For sure. So the first song I'm going to do is a song that I actually haven't released, and it's called The Aftermath. And it's one I wrote on the guitar quite a while back, but I just thought I might as well play it. And because now that I have a guitar, because for me, I'm always playing something. I'm always playing things that I know, whereas in like that I can play everything on one instrument when I'm doing, or like at least, whereas in like if I'm playing keyboards, I'm playing all keyboards and it's all the keyboard songs. But today I'm getting a chance to play one of my guitar songs, so hope you enjoy.
Thought you were flirting with the winter, 'cause you followed the road. Your fingertips were pale pink. There was snow on your clothes. You have to see it to believe it, though I don't see you alone. I still believe in you, like you're all that I've got. Now I'm never gonna change my mind. Won't be leaving you alone this time. I've decided from now on I want you near. Oh, your heart has gone numb from holding hands with the cold. But summer's coming back again this year. Bell, why don't you ring the bell? You brought me freedom in this cell. I hope I change your mind as well. I hope someday I might see you across the path, 'cause all we've got is our love and the aftermath. Now I'm never gonna change my mind. Won't be leaving you alone this time. I've decided from now on I want you near. Oh, your heart has gone numb from holding hands with the cold. But summer's coming back again next year. Now I'm never gonna change my mind. Won't be leaving you alone this time. I've decided from now on I want you near. Oh, your heart has gone up from holding hands with the cold. Summer's coming back again next year. Summer's coming back again. Oh, summer's coming back again this year.
Thanks Thanks very much.
Wow, that was brilliant. You're telling me you never played that before?
Oh no, I have. I
Okay.
don't play it often. I haven't released it, so.
Well, play it more. Play it more. That's brilliant. I love that. That was
Thanks very
class.
much.
Okay, we're gonna have another song from you later, but before I let you go now, what are you obsessed with loving at the moment, Nadine?
I'm really obsessed with this band called The Holy Mackerel, and they have this album called The Holy Mackerel, and there's this one song called Wildflowers that has been my favorite song for the last few months, and I love it so much. So that would be the thing I would say.
The Holy Mackerel, and the song is
Wildflowers by The Holy Mackerel.
Wildflowers. Okay,
really
another
cool
one I hadn't heard of, and another one I will be checking out. Thank you very much. We'll
Thanks a million.
catch
Thanks
you
for having
later,
me.
Nadine. Thank you. Okay, back to some more poetry reading. Kevin Higgins is co-organizer of Over the Edge literary events in Galway. He has published 5 previous full collections of poems, and his work has been praised by, among others, Tony Blair's biographer John Rantoul, Observer columnist Nick Cohen, writer and activist Eamon McCann, historian Ruth Dudley Edwards, and Sunday Independent columnist Jean Kerrigan. In December 2021, Kevin was both expelled from the British Labour Party, of which he was an overseas member, for publishing his poem Tribute Acts in Socialist Appeal magazine, and on the very same day, awarded Poet of the Year at the Labour Heroes Awards event at Conway Hall in London. Ecstatic, Kevin's 6th full poetry collection, is published by Salmon later this month. And I'm delighted to welcome the hardest working man in poetry, Kevin Higgins. Hello, Kevin.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks it's great to see this event and meet new poets and songwriters and so on. And I know from doing Over the Edge how much work it takes to pull these things together. So fair play to ye. The first poem I'll read is a very new one, and it is called Personal Growth. And I thought today was a perfect day for me to read it, because today is my 55th birthday. God rest my soul, I am exceptionally old. And it's after a Japanese poet, Shuntaro Tanikawa, Personal Growth. Age 7, when asked to confess them, I had no sins. This I have put right since. Age 10, I discovered I was in favor of slitting certain people's throats, though not yet in a position to do so myself. Age 15, I invented myself and swept about the place, being Kevin Patrick Higgins. Aged 18, I discovered a better sort of sin and kept trying to commit it, mostly without success. Age 27, I died for the first time. Age 28, I unscrewed my coffin lid and walked again, though I didn't know where I was going. Age 35, I didn't get there. Every age after that, I didn't get there again. And I thought the one to follow that is another it's a last year poem. Life, Death, and the Bit in the Middle. Life is books and underwear all over the floor. Death is everything in its place. The bit in the middle is mostly waiting for elevators. Life is a dog barking all night. Death goes about its business quietly. The bit in the middle is mostly waiting for the toaster to pop. Life is a series of clogged sinks. Death is absolutely clear. The bit in the middle is mostly hoping the doctor will call you next. Life is a philosophy student tossing a sweet wrapper into your garden and later phoning to claim responsibility. Death is no sweet wrapper ever. The bit in the middle is mostly thinking about the phone call you didn't make. Every life is its own particular mess. Death arrives impeccably dressed. And the third poem is, there's been a lot of talk about oligarchs lately. And of course, they aren't just Russian. This is a poem inspired by the spaceman Jeff Bezos, the head of Amazon. And great to see that the first warehouse of theirs, massive place in Coney Island, voted to set up a union, despite the fact that he had obviously very vigorously campaigned against that. And this poem is called The Unnecessary People, and it's about a world without people like Jeff Bezos. When this world and the money with which you bought it have been abolished, and all the broken things fixed, and people like me are in total control, you'll be allowed come and go from your gated community of the unnecessary, so you can see how great the world is without you. We'll even employ a retired supermodel to bring you your tea, and when the time comes, change your nappy and buy you a board game which lets you pretend to again buy the world with money that was once real and absolutely does smell, and give you a calculator so you can work out what the corporate tax rate was in places that no longer go by that name, and leave on your bedside locker a notepad in which you can draw pictures of the spaceship on which you'll make your final escape. And this poem is called When a Serial Killer Dies, and kind of explains itself. When a serial killer dies, Beelzebub's eyes leak tar tears at this latest one, paucity of ambition. The way he settled for the petty pennies of taking a ragged chainsaw to the moist necks of particular children in a disused wine cellar when, if only he'd had the farsightedness to leave the local playgrounds to themselves, he could have been Secretary of State for Defense, bought for himself with money that would otherwise have been wasted on old people, the ability to set fire to the Suez Canal or Antarctica, had named after him a bomb smart enough to go to Oxford instead of the imminent 25 past midnight film for television, perhaps been the diplomat who dismembered, like earthworms, Africa and Arabia into manageable symmetrical segments, and had a small country and scholarship in his old college, set up in his honor, matured into the general who bravely pacified Indochina and Mesopotamia, like a schoolboy methodically tearing the legs off a spider in the quiet of his bedroom, the 12th so far today, and had so many medals pinned to his chest, in the end, he almost fell over. Or been the peace envoy who oversaw the evacuation of the last German speakers from Danzig, watched them stream down country roads like ants. After that, made a living telling university students how he did it. And this is an uncontroversial poem. I don't think it is. It was inspired by a woman who, Suad Al-Dara. She is publishing her memoir with Doubleday in July with a big British publisher. And so I first met Suad when she had come she wasn't an asylum seeker because she had only got asylum to Egypt. And she managed to come to Ireland because she was had high-level computer skills. Her husband had to stay behind her in Egypt, and she did a creative writing class with me in Galway Technical Institute 9 years ago. And she has remarked, and she's an extremely mild-mannered person, that the difference, for some reason, between the way that she was treated and the way that more recent refugees have been welcomed, white. And I'd also like to dedicate to my friend Claire Daly, who is a member of the European Parliament, who's one of the few people who appears not to be in favor of World War III. White. Now they are bombing white people with bombs not officially signed off on by the people who sign off on such things. Television and internet are laden with white people fleeing their houses, many of which are no longer technically houses, into any country that'll have them, which is pretty much any country they want. The leader of the white people flashes around the world, or at least your smartphone, dressed as a hero. Elderly white women everywhere pray he'll marry their daughters, a few even that he'll take one of their bachelor sons as his wife. White people everywhere race to register their sorrow for those whose white bones and even whiter faces make them ill-suited to having bombs dropped on them. Those of us who live in half a shed will happily share our half a shed with the white people. Their children, if needs be, can rest their heads on our mousetraps, and we'll all be heroes, which is well and good. But when will the world get back to just bombing brown people? And this next one I always read. It's not actually about any specific person, although a lot of my poems are. It was written as an exercise. Myself and my wife Susan were doing a workshop with a group, and she came up with the idea of writing a curse poem. So I thought I could do that. But this isn't actually about anyone, but I would dedicate it to anyone who has ever been offended by any of my poems. Wayne talked about cancel culture and so on. My wish is for you that your son at Trinity College may graduate to become a rogue gynecologist, that his brother, the pediatrician, be suspended without pay, that your husband be caught selling wheelchairs that don't work live on national radio, and the day you discover all of the above, may the traffic wardens, every one of them, be East Galway Gestapo. May you lose your winning ticket and the gun not go off when it's supposed to. May your reflux be acid and your bowel be cranky. May your water forever be cloudy and the pharmacy be shut. May the funeral parlor refuse you and the lies you told haunt you long after the cat has made a litter tray of your ashes. Just as I read the last line, our cat settled himself up on the sofa. He was attacking my hand there earlier. Okay, just three more. 3 poem warning. I run an awful lot of poetry workshops, and you get all sorts of people in them. And in one, I was challenged by a nun to write an erotic poem. This is deadly serious. Sister Mary Lee, who is she goes by the name of Mary Lee. She is a poet. She's published 2 books. She's in my advanced poetry workshop via the Art Centre. She said she wrote a poem about Jesus at Easter. And someone in the class said, Mary, that could be interpreted as an erotic poem now, even though it's about Jesus. And she said, oh, I'd be fine with that. We ended up talking about these things and about the way that sex and food are very closely related, which was an unusual conversation to be having with a nun. And the most outrageous thing she said was that sometimes you just want a kebab, which is an interesting metaphor indeed for such things. And she says, I bet you could write an erotic poem. So this is Sister Mary Lee's fault if I am struck down by lightning from wherever, for Eros, an elegy. Her hands are a safety harness that will not hold you. The hair on her head is a field let return to the wild, despite complaints and solicitors' letters from neighbors. Her droopy right eyelid is the shutter on a sex shop, eager to close for the evening. Her chest is the hills of Clare, inviting you across the bay, though you can't swim and the last boat has left for the season. Her neck, lips, and ears are the menu of starters in a restaurant so fabulous The security guards are paid a bonus to eject the likes of you. Her spine is a repossessed grand piano you still play to yourself in your sleep. Her pubic hair is a lawn you'll never get to walk across or break into a sweat mowing. Her bumhole is a sweet factory you'll never be allowed visit, and the cheeks either side of it smoother than the nectarines you remember from July. Her thighs are piping hot turkey on the table for Christmas, but with a far better personality than your average turkey. And between them, all the oranges stomach acid no longer allows you to eat. So that, if anyone has any complaints about that poem, they can address them to Sister Mary Lee. And second last poem was written in response to the Irish Times ran a poetry and the Shelburne Hotel ran a poetry competition to mark the 100 years of the Irish Constitution. And the poem would be displayed in the Constitution Room, which there is apparently, in the Shelburne Hotel, and the person would get to stay in the Shelburne Hotel, and they would get €1,000 spending money. But it was noticed that in the terms and conditions initially when it came out, that only people who lived in the 26 counties of the south of Ireland could enter this poem. So it would mean, for example, Seamus Heaney, if he was an emerging poet when he was, would be barred from entering this competition. So one of the things I was reading, the poets I've been looking at, Francois Villon, who was a total disgrace in every way. He once stabbed a priest in the vulnerable areas and was sent into exile by the king for that. He is a major figure in kind of late medieval French literature, and he has a poem called The Ballad of Contradictions. So I thought this could be a way into writing a poem for this in response to the Irish Times and Shelburne Hotel competition. The Dialectics of Irish, after Francois Villon. There is no great starvation without someone somewhere keeping the trout pate for later. No T-bone steak at the Shelburne, rare or well done, without bales of straw being dragged through January mornings. No plate of cabbage without the possibility of an open safety pin camouflaged within it like a terrorist. No refusal of a cup of tea that's not a potential resumption of hostilities. No glass of high-end whiskey you can't be sure the night porter didn't celebrate his departure by lacing with high-end Dublin piss. Though these days he's mostly from Latvia or Killybegs. No problem that can't be made worse by a pair of fashionable glasses whose big idea is a poetry competition sponsored by Guinness on the theme of black and white. There is no thaw without Neil, no without the wink of other possibilities, no card game that can't finish up with everybody losing, no peace talks to which the dead aren't invited, no ballot box in Leitrim without the ghost of an Armalite or the actual metal of a Hector and Koch guard a submachine gun in the hands of a large farmer's son from County Meath. No pint of Guinness that can't be made worse by a poem about peace shouted out by a pair of fashionable glasses. There's no wealth like empty office blocks, no talent like the country's least favorite novelist, no generosity like an Anglo-Irishman taking his 10-gallon hat out for the evening, no wisdom like a Leinster rugby fan screeching for war with Russia, no courage like informing, no place in the minds of the nation's keenest intellects that exists less than Cregan, Ballymurphy, Crossmaglen, and no poem about all this that can't be made more unpalatable by a pair of fashionable glasses trying to sell you the best of all possible pints of what might be Guinness. And finally, the final poem is called This Is Not a Well-Made Poem. And it's kind of about the way that the well-made, proper poem, it's a certain number of lines length, it has a certain tone, middle-class person goes uphill and has an epiphany on a nice day, realizes something, that sort of thing is nothing wrong with that, but the idea that it's the only way of writing poetry is a profoundly ideological position, and it is ever since the Victorian age, keeps coming back, that idea. This is not a well-made poem. The well-made poem puts on its dicky bow, walks to the top of the hill, and has what it calls an epiphany. The well-made poem sees every side of the argument, except those prescribed by the BBC. The well-made poem has between 12 and 25 lines, all roughly the same length. The well-made poem worries about Afghanistan, and before that, Vietnam, only when the situation there might lead to the whole idea of the well-made poem being vaporized by a device left at the side of the road. The well-made poem plans to bury G.K. Chesterton, William Wordsworth, Sir John Betjeman, and eventually Sir Andrew Motion under its sparkling new patio. The well-made poem never mentions the puppy processing factory it knows you own, or your preference for televised intergender wrestling. The well-made poem believes nuclear weapons are necessary to keep poems like it safe from all the rough language gathered ungovernable at the border, forever threatening to invade it. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kevin. And I wish you a happy birthday, sir. You're only a young whippersnapper.
Yes, God rest my soul.
Before I let you go, any recommendations for us of something that you're loving at the moment?
Okay, I have become obsessed. I've read an awful lot during the last 2 years, and it was a tie between two books, one of which is a bit esoteric. Well, they're both a bit esoteric, really, but that's okay. And they are these. Miroslav Holub, who is a brilliant Czechoslovak poet. He died about 15 years ago. Very quirky. He was what are those things called? I'm blanking now. COVID fog is still there. He was an immunologist, so he would have been a busy man in the last while. And his poems are very absurdist and strange, and they've given me loads of ideas for poems. The other one, which I only got at the end of January, but despite that, the cover is completely turned over, and I've read most of it. A book edited by Frederick Jameson, who is a brilliant literary critic, Marxism and Form, about the way that, why are sonnets a thing? Why do artistic forms have the form that they do in the times that they do? And there's pieces on Adorno, Walter Benjamin, Herbert Marcuse, Ernest Bloch, George Lukács, Jean-Paul Sartre, and it's a very difficult read, but it's well worth it. And you will never exactly believe everything you see on Claire Byrne Live in the same way. Again, you will see it into a different lens, which I did anyway. But it's
looking well thumbed there. So
it is, yeah, for a book that arrived on the 22nd of January. It's doing well.
Okay, thank you for that, Kevin. Great stuff. Okay, back to the music. Oran, can we get another song from you?
My pleasure, Derek. So I think it's only right that I do the fan favorite. This one is called Paranoia, and it's the opening track on the album, but it's the second single I ever released. So it's on all streaming platforms. You can go check it out. And yeah, it just recently hit 1,000 streams. I think the last time I checked, it's over 1,200 now. So
congratulations.
Yeah, off to a good start. So I'll stand up again for this one.
Okay, take it away.
Thanks very much. Is the camera there? No. Yeah, so it's called Paranoia.
Paranoia, 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 paranoia. It's become a part of me, and it's searching for my soul. It's gone on for too long, and now it's getting old. Thought I'd soon recover, boy, was I wrong? Will somebody please help me, 'cause I'm suffering from paranoia, 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 paranoia. You always treated me like a puppet on a string. You insisted that you do your own thing. A small sacrifice to pay for salvation. Will somebody please help me, 'cause I'm suffering from paranoia, 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 paranoia. Let's go. Paranoia, 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 paranoia.
Thank you.
Brilliant. And before I let you go, Oran, would you have a recommendation for us?
In terms of what I'm obsessed with, like, that's what you mean.
Yes. What's your? Are you obsessed, loving anything at the moment?
At the moment, I'm listening to a lot of Radiohead recently. Gotten into them big time. And the Chili Peppers just released a new album. And for anyone that's familiar with them or remembers Don Frusciante, it wasn't the first lead guitarist, but he was the best in the band, and he's back. So it's kind of like those four members are just meant to be. So
that's a return to form for the Chili Peppers, is it?
Yeah, he's the reason I wanted to start learning the guitar as well when I was like 14. So it's mad he's even back at all. Aside from music, there's a Londis just down the road for me, and they do these brownies. And every time
I love it.
I can't resist them, Derek. They're really good. So
excellent.
Londis
brownies.
If there's a local
possibly the best recommendation we've had all night.
Yeah, if anyone has a local Londis there, just go to the bakery section and look for the brownies. You know exactly which ones I'm talking about. So
I'll have
my recommendation.
Londis brownie while I'm reading Marxism and Form. How about that? All right. Thanks so much, Oran. Brilliant stuff. Okay, and back to some poetry reading. Shannon O'Reilly is a writer and poet from Waterford. She holds a BA in English and an MA in comparative literature. Her interest lies in the representation of memories in various forms. And Shannon is coming to us, having just in recent months had a wonderful performance at the Seen and Heard Festival in Subbacultcha. Tell us a little bit about that, Shannon.
Yeah, and Derek, I might write some prose instead of some poetry, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, sorry, of
Yeah,
course.
that
Yes.
is. But also I want to say I feel super inspired tonight. I'm like, oh, this is what I love. 'Cause yeah, I hadn't done anything creative, I think, for ages, and then got the opportunity with Seeing and Heard to put on a play that I'd actually written during COVID, and then that got postponed because of COVID. So it finally got its debut in Smock Alley, and yeah, it was amazing. I was like, this is what I want to do with my life, and maybe not be an educator.
So the sold out crowd.
Yeah, and yeah, Grania was amazing. She got a standing ovation.
Okay, I'm gonna let you take away with your reading.
Yeah. Okay. So this is called Wild. The first night we spent together, I dreamed in poetry, my own, and others whispering words then jolting me awake. I turn and see his sleeping body pushed to the edge of the single bed that he'd declared was enough. Enough for you, I thought, already psychoanalyzing his life based on a single bed and the books that were propped against his window. The usual culprits, with some surprises. I felt his eyes on me as I thumbed through the titles. I've more at home. Is this not home? I thought, but just nodded. I watched him sleep, only for a moment. Arms stretched above his head, the other sprawled across his abdomen, his face younger in sleep, like all men's. Why are men so endearing when they're sleeping? I'd asked a friend as we sat outside Grogan's. I robbed one of her cigarettes and laughed when she declared, because they're asleep. Everyone's beautiful when they're asleep. A woman at the table next to ours laughed and nodding to Lucy announced, it's because they can't hurt you. They're not talking out their arse either, the woman's friend added, and the two cackled, and we laughed with them. Everyone's beautiful when they're asleep. I watched the rise and fall of his chest before turning from him, changing my mind only to turn towards him. I hadn't shared the intimacy of a single bed with someone in almost 10 years. When I'd met him and heard his voice, I thought he was obnoxious. He wasn't. When we'd loved each other, wrapped in the intimacy and safety of another, in my college room single bed, I thought, this is the beginning of my life. It was, and it wasn't. We loved each other in the way only teenagers can, intensely and harshly, tender and beautiful all at once. We loved each other, but we were sloppy and hurtful as we tried on different versions of ourselves and tried to love each other before ever loving ourselves. He shifts, breaking the dream of nostalgia and dragging me back to the present. His arm reaches for my body, and I am touched and overwhelmed by this unconscious gesture. He pulls my body into his, the heat of him warming me, and the rhythm of his heart against my back pulling me towards sleep. We spend the morning rearranging one another's limbs, mapping one another's bodies. I hold our limbs apart, examine the freckles on your skin. You watch with an intensity that embarrasses me, but I do not shy away from your gaze. I wonder aloud how much time we'd both save if we could know just from people's limbs whether or not they were good. You don't understand and laugh. Bone good, I tell him. Did your mother not tell you about them? The ones who were good to the bone, not a bad bone in their body, salt of the earth. I lift an arm and let it drop. Bone good. We grab a coffee and some sort of mushroom pastry masquerading as a vegan sausage roll that we both laugh at in between mouthfuls, agreeing that people complicate everything. We find a tree to sit against and people watch. I find myself being moved by the most mundane things. I watch two young brothers in matching jackets hold on to each other, and I have to laugh at the tears brimming in my eyes. The main trouble I found was that after you've lived a part of your life looking for exit routes and escape plans, mundanity of every day can be overwhelming. Once I actively decided I didn't want to die, I found myself weeping at the slightest thing. Usually, it was people's quiet tenderness with each other. Children kissing their parents on buses, old men with dogs, Teenage couples wrapped around each other. The first day after winter when it feels like spring. My father, in his silence and incapability of affection, leaving a cup of tea beside me as I read. I wanted to tell you this. What a beautiful day to be alive. Your hand traces for mine, reaches for mine, and your thumb absent-mindedly draws circles on my hand. And you ask what made me stay. I bite my lip and wonder how to explain how difficult I found it to hold on to myself for a while. Some people hold on to things, some onto stuff, and others onto people. I couldn't hold on to anything, not even myself. It all peeled away from me. I don't tell him this. Instead, I offer him Joyce. Think you're escaping and run into yourself. Longest way round is the shortest way home. Are you home? He asks. I tell him there are only two things I'm absolutely certain of in this world. My mother, and that I'm no longer running from myself, only toward. I tell him of my mother's words. I am the tar road back to you. And we talk about the parts of ourselves we give to others, the parts of ourselves we've outgrown. We speak in poetry. T.S. Eliot measured his life in coffee spoons, and you tell me about the people you've met making coffee, how some people make you feel as though you're part of the furniture. Those people can't hold down people, I offer, and you laugh. You don't mind not being looked at. Wild, I think. Wild. How freeing it must be to exist without the certainty of other people. I try to find the words, but none fit right in my mouth. There was a time when I didn't feel real. I needed the physical confirmation of others that I was real, that I wasn't just. I searched for the word again, just, and I spread my hands. I needed to feel tangible is the word I settle on. I pause and think of my mother, holding items of ourselves against her body before bending down for another peg, before hanging us out to dry. I used to think that this was her moment's rest, a pause in the measurement of our lives. No coffee spoons, only the clothes to outgrow. The more I think about it, the more I think it was her clinging on to her sense of self. I love my mother, but she has built herself around motherhood. She couldn't remember who she was, so she clung on to us. That's wild, High, your accent sings. I nod in agreement, and we continue to watch people play out their lives in real time. We've each had our stomachs kissed by strangers, our scarred skin both carrying lovers and the damage and beauty they caused. I've offered you the ugliest parts of myself, and still, you think I'm beautiful. I send you tweets that make me weep and you don't laugh. I'm struck by a stranger in her last moments with her grandfather. Don't mind her, he said. That's just my whole world, as she danced for him, as he slipped away. We watch Manchester by the Sea, having to pause and walk away from a life that does not exist. Neither of us care much for the line between fact and fiction. You ask me one day if truth is important, and I shrug. I don't know, I answer. And you don't mind. Wait, they don't love you like I love you. Wait, they don't love you like I love you. I sing along, feeling the sunshine on my face, watching my feet carry me in front of the other. They don't love you like I. The music stops and I check my watch, wondering if I'm going to have to run for the train. I slow down. I have time, plenty of it. Today is one of those days where I'm happy to be alive and at home myself. The song continues. I wonder who they are. They'll never love you like I love you. No one will ever love me as much as I love me, except maybe my mother. I laugh and catch my reflection in the canal's water. Now I am a lake. A woman bends over me, searching my reaches for what she really is. I turn my back from my reflection and think of Plath, of her words, of her pain, and the students who ask me, what does it mean? What does any of it mean? In me, she has drowned a young girl, and in me, an old woman rises towards her day after day like a terrible fish. I turn towards the canal once more, examining my own reflection. I know who I am. I do not have to reach down. I change the song and I return to Plath's words, the ones I always carry with me. I am, I am, I am. He holds me in his arms and I feel like a child. I'd forgotten how this kind of safety felt. I tell him, he reminds me of the feeling of the sea hitting my face and catching my breath. He is more than salt of the earth. He is sea spray. And I feel like the wind that people don't like to get caught in, but do. The kind of woman that shakes the cobwebs from a person. We are both the days and elements that make people feel alive, and we have found each other. I promise him I will not check our compatibility online, and I haven't. Wild, I think. My fingers knot in his curls, and I press my nose into his neck. I think if people were places, I could live here. I breathe him in and feel his body exhale. When I push my body against his, I think of Plath. My bones hold a stillness. The far fields melt my heart. He is a stillness I have not held before. My knotted hand lets go and we unravel from each other. Oh, my enemy, do I terrify? He props his body on an elbow and I watch as he swallows words. Flesh, bone, there is nothing there. We've both forgotten where we begin. I'm mad about you, he whispers, and I wonder how much time I'd wasted mapping other men's bodies, laughing at how I'd adored and kissed parts of men I never even liked, when you and your body have existed, waiting to be loved. This is only the beginning, and you are my opus. And that's it.
Fantastic. Well done.
Thank you.
That was I absolutely love that idea of mapping the bodies. It's such a wonderful phrase. Thanks, Shannon. Okay, what have you got first? What are you obsessed with, loving?
God, so much. Also, Wayne called out my Taylor Swift obsession. It's written on my mug here, her quotes.
Excellent.
But I love Orla Garland, who's an Irish singer. Her music's amazing, and I keep listening to "You're Not Special, Babe" on repeat. So would that give her a shout out?
Excellent.
Sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And speaking of music, thanks, Shannon. Speaking of music, back to Aideen. And a ukulele this time, I believe.
Yeah. So I'm going to be playing a version of one of my songs. I guess like a ukulele version of a song from my new EP called "Say You're in Love," and here goes. And also, like, thanks so much for having me, and it was a really fantastic night. I loved all the poetry and all the music. It was so cool. Okay. I am the observer, and I can see beautiful things come every so often. It's like I told you, you're not alright. You're not alright. You're not alright. You're not alright. Close. Now take this further. Now throw it away. There goes your happy ever after. Just like I told you, you're not alright. You're not alright. You're not alright. You're not alright. So say you're in love. I want you to say you think that she's in love. It's for nothing.
Fabulous.
Thanks very much.
A gorgeous way to end our Subbacultcha this evening.
Thanks a million.
Thank you, Aideen. Thanks to everyone tonight. Thank you for the readings to Wayne Power, to Rosamund Taylor, to Kevin Higgins, to Shannon O'Reilly. Thank you for the wonderful music to Oran Byrne and to Aideen Costley. And we will be back next month again with more poetry and more music from some talented, wonderful people. And for now, that's it. I'm Derek Flynn.